Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome everybody to this meeting of the Joplin Schools Board of Education. Pat, roll call.
Mr. Kimbrough?
Here.
Ms. Dicklin?
Here.
Mr. Landis?
Present.
Mr. Wilcoxon?
Here.
Mr. Steele?
Here.
Ms. Sharp?
Present.
And Mr. Flowers?
Here.
Thank you.
We're going to open tonight's meeting with our annual tax rate hearing. Mr. Barr?
Thank you, President Flowers. Yes, we have an annual tax rate levy hearing this time of year every year, and this year we're recommending that the levy remain the same at $2.75 for the operating levy, and that would be 91 cents for the debt service levy, for a total of $3.66. The debt service levy does reflect the most recent election of April of 12, when we had a 35-cent increase for our current projects. I was looking back at some of the area school districts around us. The total rates for them range from $3.11 to $3.82. So we're slightly to the high side of that range. I see everybody's in there at $2.75 or above on the operating levy. The operating levy pays for the lights, the labor, the teachers, the supplies it takes to run the school district, and the debt service pays principal and interest toward the bonds used to build buildings. So that's how those two levies are used. But I just want to preface about the levy, and the board will act on the levy later in this meeting. There's an action item to adopt the levy at that rate. But I know you would entertain comments from the public if there were any.
Ms. Waldo, do we have anyone signed up?
I'm not aware of anyone.
I'd just like to comment that our tax rate is in line with Carl Junction, Webb City, and our surrounding districts. We're not out of the ballpark. We're right. So this part of southwest Missouri is about the same tax levy. Is that correct?
That's correct, Ms. Sharp.
And also, just add to that our 275 operating levy is the lowest required by the state of Missouri. So we're in that there's only a couple districts in the state that have a lower tax levy than we do, and those are districts that are hold harmless districts that live in some very affluent areas. So our tax levy is as low as it can possibly be from the operating side.
We did publish in the Joplin Globe the ad describing our assessed valuation last year and this year, and that the revenues that this levy would produce based on that assessed valuation, and notice of this meeting tonight.
All right, so now we will adjourn to our regular meeting. And since I've already had Ms. Waldo do the roll call, we don't need to do that, and we will go right into Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Waldo.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So we have no district showcase?
Not this evening, but we'll have kids here next month.
Were you going to do the recognition?
I was going to do that under my superintendent's report, but we can
Okay.
certainly do it now.
We'll do it on superintendent
Okay.
report. All right, so then we will approve the agenda. Do I hear a motion?
So moved. Second.
Can I remove a policy item out of the consent agenda, just so we can have some discussion on it?
Sure. What would you like to
The
remove?
district wellness policy, please.
District wellness.
I think Ms. Smith is still with us, correct?
Yes, she is back
Okay,
there. I don't know if
awesome.
she wants to talk this evening, but she's here.
Okay.
All right, so we will remove the district wellness policy.
Yes, please.
All right, so I've had a motion, and I don't recall somebody.
Second. Jim, second.
Okay, and
Second.
so it was Mr. Still, Mr. Wilcoxon, and Mr. Kimbrough. Any further discussion? Please vote.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. All right, so superintendent's report.
All right, well, let's start with some great news. I have a couple of recognitions that I would like to do this evening. The first one we have that I'd like to ask Miss Susan Flowers to come up. Ms. Flowers teaches PE for us at Irving. and is really excited about her new gymnasium that she's going to be moving into in the very near future. And I was recently notified that Ms. Flowers had been recognized as the 2013 Young Professional of the Year. And I think you and I have talked before, and I think we're about the same age, so I really appreciated this from the Missouri Association for Health, Physical Education, Recreation, and Dance. So congratulations, very well deserved.
I would just like to tell you how much I appreciate your support. You provide me the tools that I need every day to serve our children and provide a quality physical education for them, and additional minutes even outside of the classroom for clubs and extracurricular activities. And I appreciate the professional development and the leadership opportunities that you provided inside and outside of the district. And I look forward to representing Joplin schools as I accept the award in November. So,
Awesome. Well,
thank you.
congratulations again, proud of you.
Thank you.
Good job. The next award that I'd like to bring forward, Mark Tyrell. I saw him in the back.
All right.
As Mark's coming up, this is a recognition that came up over the summer, which sometimes will slip under the radar on us, and got wind of it. Mark's a pretty humble guy, I think, and wasn't shouting from the rooftops to receive this award, but certainly very deserving. And what this is the Teacher of the Year from Missouri Trade and Technology Division from the Missouri Association of Career and Technical Education. Certificate of recognition to Mark Tyrell. And as I give this to him, a quick story, a project. In fact, I'm going to give you this, and I'm going to let you tell your story about your project with help me out.
Water Gardens.
Water Gardens.
Yeah,
Thank you. I was
Dr.
thinking river. So go ahead.
Well, fortunately, Water Gardens came to us, and I believe Mr. Reed might have seen the need to help Water Gardens with community projects, and mentioned to me, what would you like to do some of the heating and air for them, or maybe help with it. And so I presented it to my kids. Jeff Lockney helped me with a project-based learning project for this, and we actually set this project up in December of last Christmas, and in that short period of time, my students helped me put this whole package together, and we put 6 full heating and air conditioning systems in for them. They paid the raw cost of it at our cost, which was a very good price, and we got equipment donated almost from the suppliers in the area. My students did everything: duct work, wiring, freon lines, and the whole 9 yards. They designed it. They did the engineering on it. They did the math on the duct work, and we had that full project finished May 15th when we walked out of school. So it was really just fantastic.
That's awesome. That's a great example of some of the work, more of that kind of work that we hope to get going here in the very near future as we build our new high school. Angie, did you want to?
Yeah, I need to add a really quick story. Mark has been one of the lead teachers who's been involved in a lot of the training that we've provided for the one-to-one. We've pulled out those lead teachers. And one of the interesting things that was shared with me about Mark, and I don't know that I've ever shared that with you, Mark, is that while you're in those trainings, that you would be changing things for your kids back in their classroom because you were adjusting the lesson plans through the tools that he was using and how his kids were doing. And so he has a sub in his classroom using the technology to, at that moment, I learned this, I'm changing today's lesson for today's kids in the classroom that he's not even in, which just goes to show you. And the other important point of that is that, Mark is a career and technical teacher, and yet that laptop and that one-to-one piece is something that he's definitely embraced, and it's enhanced. And so you're a leader in that, and we appreciate it.
Thank you.
How many years of experience did you have in the field before?
Well, I was with Southwestern Bell AT&T. Started off actually working on the buildings, and then I got into management, but probably a total of 30 years. And retired, and Mr. Reed found me over. I used to have that squeaky clean car wash, and they lost their HVAC instructor, and somebody bent his ear a little bit, so he shows up and talked to Kim about it, and next thing I know, I'm over there just helping out for a couple of weeks. Anyway, really, truly, I've always wanted to teach. I love it, and it's not even like going to work. I truly enjoy it.
I saw you had somebody taking pictures. Who was that? Here today.
Today? Oh, that's Kim, that's my wife Kim, I'm sorry, Kim, can you stay?
Thank you. Thanks for being here tonight.
All right, thank you very much, I appreciate it.
Mark, I saw you in the Show Me magazine also, Mark.
Oh, yeah.
He's an Air Force veteran.
Oh, really?
Awesome.
That's why he flies that plane around town all the time.
Very good. Next up on the agenda, district performance update, and Dr. Bessendorfer is going to take the lead on that presentation.
I am taking the lead, but Paul, I'm going to need you to share your microphone because I'm going to call a few folks up to the table. I need for Jason Cravens, Jennifer Dosher, and Sarah Stevens to come up and join because they're going to be sharing this time. I was given about 10 minutes to give a performance update on where we're at and all of that. You know, annual performance reports, you've probably seen the newspaper and things coming out. And so we wanted to give you a picture of the MAP data, the end of course exam, several things. And so tonight's presentation will include both the MAP, the end of course. It'll also include ACT, advanced placement, dual credit, and then some of the categories for MSIP 5 for the performance report. And so we just want to make sure that you're up to date and you know that information and where that's coming from and how those things impact us. I'm going to be turning it over to the team, but first I want to clearly define just something that I think is important for our community to understand because the MAP scores and the end of course exams come out in two different ways. You can see the percentage of students that are proficient and advanced, which a lot of times is what gets publicized, is that percent. There's also a number called the MPI, the MAP Performance Index, and I think it's important for you to understand as a board what the two different numbers do and how they do that and why then we base our decisions on the MPI more so. The percent proficient and advanced really just counts the number of students who achieved at the proficient or the advanced level and divides it by the total number of kids who was assessed. So it really is the percentage who achieved at proficient or advanced. And it doesn't really make a differentiation between proficient or advanced. It's just they're all the same. They say they all met that proficiency level or above, and that's good. It does not account for those students who are in the below basic or basic category, which we think is important. We want to be sure that all kids count so that if we're leaving a whole bunch in below basic, that we're actually watching that. And the other thing that I think is important, and particularly because we have schools of different sizes and because we're often compared to schools of different sizes, is that when you look at the percentage of proficient and advanced, it can be very different from one school to the next in what it takes to make gains. So an improvement in proficient and advanced may look like it's like, wow, they just really, did a great job this year, or they did a horrible job this year with their results. But the size of the group matters. We all understand math. So if you think about a class that in one of our small elementaries that might have, 30 kids that are tested in that grade level, and so if it's 30 kids that are tested, every student that was moved from basic to proficient, that gains you 3%. So you could move 3 kids and you gain 10% gain in proficient and advanced. On the other hand, a school that has 600 kids, and so they've got 200 per grade level, it takes 2 kids to move even 1%. And so that's just an important mathematical thing that I think sometimes when you say, oh wow, this school that's smaller made big gains, it may not be that clear. It doesn't exactly play out that way because of just the mathematical understandings that happen when you have the averages and you do that percentage piece. On MPI, on the other hand, it counts everything. It counts, you get a number for each kid that's in below basic, a number that you count 1 for each of that, you get a number for each kid that's in basic, a number for each kid that's in proficient, and a higher number then for each kid that's in advanced. It increases the amount of points you get for each of those categories, with more points gained for moving kids to advanced. And then also it's kind of a significant hit if you leave them in the below basic. And so higher achievement is weighted more. We think that's important. So the MPI measures every kid and whether we've moved. And so growth from one year to the next year on MPI means that we've actually made movement of kids. So the percent proficient and advanced could be the very same percent, but we could have taken kids who were proficient and moved them to advanced and got a higher MPI. Likewise, we could have had the percent be the same, but the percentage in basic moved down to below basic, so we did those kids a disservice, and the MPI would be lower. And so there's some things that just counts every kid, and so we like to, and we prefer to use those statistics that count every kid. So you'll see tonight that in our report, we're reporting with MPI, the MAP Performance Index. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah to give the overall results.
Okay. So on the slide here, when we looked at the achievement for our students, what we noticed in our MPI performance levels were the ones that the state improved in, we also improved in, and the ones that the state dropped slightly, so did we. So on English language arts, and for the 2013 state report, they improved slightly, as well as Joplin. And then in science, the state improved as well as we did in Joplin as well. And then in math and social studies, the state overall took a slight dip, and we saw our scores dip a little.
So how many kids did it take to move that? Like English language looks like we moved 1 point, if you don't count the point out. How many kids is that in our district? Sort of, kind of.
With an MPI, you can't count it by kids because it's about the whole collective, so that, it's not a percent proficient and advanced like you can
Okay,
count
then I
each kid.
misunderstood.
Okay, so,
Okay.
but MPI, you don't calculate that way because you could gain points by moving a kid from proficient to advanced, or you could gain points by moving them from below basic to basic, or from basic to proficient.
Okay.
Any of those ways can give you gains.
Okay.
So this gives you a better idea of a shift in the overall population one way or the other.
Well, and part of it is that there are some schools that would say, here are our kids who are on that basic line, but they're almost proficient. And so because we want to increase the percent, which is what a lot of the things are based on, then they focus on that small line of kids and just ignore everybody else. I don't say ignore, but they don't work with that same thing. We want to be sure that we're focusing on every student and moving every student. And so that's why we're focusing on the MPI. But it's a lot more complicated than to say one student does this, because it depends, and it depends on the number. Like in English language arts, there's several tests, and that's where Sarah's going to next.
So when we look at English language arts, we have 8 grades or subjects tested in our 3rd through senior classes. So we have 3rd to 8th grade are tested all the way through, and then our English 1 and our English 2 classes. And when we look overall, our scores improved in 6 out of the 8 areas. And then in math, we had 9 grades subjects tested from 3rd to 8th grade, and then we have Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and Geometry. And in those areas, we had 3 out of the 9 areas improve. In science, we have 5th and 8th grade, and then our biology take end of course exams or MAP tests, and our scores improved in 2 out of those 3 areas. And in social studies, both of our subjects took a slight drop, but so did the state, as I said before. So if you can think of our data as kind of like a bell curve, we're always going to have students that fall in all categories, and we're going to find students that fall in the low end and students that fall in the high end. And so one of the reports that we kind of pulled and looked at were how many of our students were under 10% in below basic, and then how many were under less than 5% of our total population of kids. So in English language arts, we had 4 of those subject tested areas fell under 10% and below basic, which we felt was a celebration, and then 3 of those additional areas fell below 5%, making 7 out of our 8 English language arts testing courses fall below 10% below basic.
So just to jump back into there, that whole MPI thing, one of the things that we want to look at is, are we stranding kids in that below basic area, or are we really growing kids? And so when you think of a bell curve and what percentage of the population might be at that bottom end of the bell curve, we think if it's less than 10%, we're probably doing a pretty good job. And so these are those categories.
And so in math, we were happy to report that 6 out of the 9 classes were actually less than 5% and below basic. And then in science, 1 out of 3 of our areas, and social studies, 1 out of the 2 areas fell in the below basic, less than 5% of our kids fell in that category.
Any questions on that? Does
In
it
the
make
social
sense?
studies, we took a significant drop.
We did, but one of the areas actually had less than 5% and below basic. And then that same course had actually more kids in advanced, which will be the next slide that we show.
And
So
what was-
basically, more of our kids fell within the curve than they did the previous year.
Okay, and I'm talking about the MPI.
We're talking about the percent of the kids that were in that,
Math Performance
in that
Index,
below
right.
basic category. I think it's important, as bell curve doesn't have an MPI to it, so we're looking at percent there.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the overall district things, and we skipped
Oh,
that
okay.
social studies piece. So,
Want me to go back? Right. So-
it just, that looked like a significant drop. Maybe it isn't. Somebody needs
Yeah.
to, maybe.
Well, it's a concern. It's something that I think that we'll be definitely looking at, and we're already, I know Carrie's already shared that information with the teachers. And those are both at the high school level, so they're both high school end-of-course exams, and they're relatively new exams, but not brand new.
It's within the last 5 years that we started taking those exams. And then one of the things that our high school and middle school teachers did this summer recently is they got together and talked about what elementary and middle school could be doing to help prepare the high school students better for when they take that exam. So that's definitely something on our radar that we want to make sure that we improve on for next year.
So, any other questions on that moving students from the bottom? Okay.
So on the opposite side, when we're stretching our kids to advanced, what we noticed was out of our 8 courses, we had 2 of those courses fell 10 to 15% in the advanced category. So we had 10 to 15% of our kids fall in that category, and 6 of our courses fell in 15 to 20% advanced. So when you look at that, that shows that 8 out of 8 of our courses had students that fell in advanced.
What is the difference? It says advanced.
10 to 15%.
What's the first column, advanced?
Students that we had those courses that fell in the 10 to 15% in advanced, and then the next one is 15 to 20%
In advanced.
in advanced. So we actually had more kids in advanced in 6 of our courses,
Okay.
6
So-
out of 8.
10 to 15% of the students in 2 grade or subjects fell in the 10 to 15% of our students were in advanced. And on the other side of it then, in 6 of the grade areas, we had it from 15 to 20% of our students achieving at the advanced level. And when you think about the rate of giftedness and you think about those kinds of things of what would be on that other side of the bell curve, we think that's pretty good to be reaching that, especially when you consider the rigorous level of the Missouri assessment. At the 8th grade level, it's ranked most rigorous in the nation, and we've got in our categories, we've got some really great stretches there. So we think that's pretty good.
So essentially, what you're saying is, this is kind of confusing to me.
Uh-huh.
What a surprise. If I'm looking at this correctly, you have more kids who have tested for advanced, 8 out of 8, than you do that have tested below basic, 7 out of 8.
Right.
Is
So
that a good thing or indifferent?
Well, I think that we want to do well on both ends of the spectrum. We would like for our percentage of students in advanced to be really high, and we would like for our percentage of students in below basic to be really low. So 7 out of 8 of the categories in English language arts are below basic is low, and 8 out of 8 are advanced is high.
It's high, okay.
And the reality is that in Missouri, we test all kids. So it doesn't matter whether they're tested with a MAP alternate program or they're special education, they're all the same in this, there's different kinds of assessments, but there's only a certain percentage that can take MAP A, which is an alternate, which is based on their IEP. So students who are learning disabled in English language arts still take this exam. And the fact that we have that low of a percentage of below basic is a good thing.
It's pretty good, okay.
Yeah, so I think these are celebrations.
So when you want 0?
Well, we would love to have 0.
Okay.
And that's what No Child Left Behind wants. They want 100% of our kids
So
in.
this up here should be a low number, like 0 out of 8. 0/8.
Well,
And this one
actually-
should always be 8 out of 8.
No, we want this one is that the subjects, the grade levels that have less than 10% of their kids.
But we don't
and
want any
below
kids
basic.
down there, so we'd want that to be a 0.
No.
But is that unrealistic? An
don't know.
unrealistic
No,
expectation?
the number that we have here is in second grade, or in third grade, was there less than 10% in below basic? If the answer was yes, then they got to count. So we counted one. If it's less than that in fourth grade, if it's less than that in fifth grade, if it's less than that in sixth grade, if it's less than that in seventh, eighth, then in English 1 and English 2. So there's 8 possibilities, and 7 out of 8 of those, it was less than 10%. That's a good thing.
All right.
Is everybody with us on the moving students from the bottom? We want it to be less than 10%. We said that's significant and that's a celebration if it's less than 10%. On the other side of it, we said if it's over 10% in advanced, that's a celebration. And that's what this chart is showing, is that in 3 of the subjects, we have all the grade levels and all the end of course exams have at least 10% of the students in advanced. And in some of them, there was above 20. So Sarah, what else?
Yeah, just simply pointing out that in science, we had one that we had 20% of our students scored in the advanced, above 20% in the advanced column for science. But all 3 of our courses that are tested in science had students in those categories in advanced. And then even in social studies, even though we took a slight drop overall in our MAP index points, both courses had students that fell in that 10 to 15% in advanced.
It's a little bit confusing. Any other questions on that? Does that need to digest a little bit, or are we?
Let's move on.
Okay. I'm trying to keep within my time, but I think it's important information, so I think Jennifer's going to jump in with some elementary stuff.
Yes, so I'm here to talk to you about the elementary level. We're going to talk about the cohorts in this section. And when we're talking about a cohort, we're talking about students as they move from 3rd grade all the way through 5th grade. So where did they start in 3rd grade and where did they end up when they were in 5th grade? And we're also going to talk about the cohort that moved from 3rd into 4th grade. So you can see the growth. That way we're really looking at what students did and what progress did they make with the MPI. Instead of comparing one group to another group of students that went through, this is the same group of students. So when we're talking about cohort, that's what we mean by that. So if you'll look at the slide there, 5th grade cohort group, comparing the 3rd grade to 5th grade in English language arts, they improved from 3rd grade to 5th grade by 31.7 MPI. So there was good improvement in that group. And then in math, by 35.9 MPI was their improvement.
What could they have improved to?
Well, obviously, you know,
100?
They could
they could have improved.
They could have improved to 4 points for every kid because every kid would be in advanced. So that's the top. The top of the top is 100% of the kids achieve at advanced.
Yeah, 100% would be the maximum. So.
Okay,
But to see that they had that growth over the last 2 years is good growth.
good.
In 4th grade, looking at the cohort from 3rd to 4th grade in English language arts, they improved by 22.6 MPI from 3rd to 4th grade. And in math, they improved by 23.1 MPI from 3rd to 4th grade. So those are some good improvements as you're watching that cohort of students, you know, move through, and you can continue to track them all the way through up into high school as well. So
Okay,
that's
so-
the great thing about that.
Next year, when you come for the 3rd to 4th graders, they'll be your 3rd to 5th graders. If
Yes,
they did
that
as
is-
well as our 5th graders this year, that should be at least 35 in math.
We would want to see that, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Or better. Mhm. Yes.
So the bottom line is that what we're saying is it's value-added education in Joplin. If you stay for, if you're here as a cohort, and we're counting any transient kids, whoever's tested, we're not taking out only the kids who have been with us those years. This is just who took the test in Joplin, which could mean they've been with us for a week, and it could mean they've been with us for, 3 years or 5 years or 6 years or whatever. Is the bottom line is that is that group of kids improving in that MPI score? So are kids moving from below basic towards that top? And if the MPI score is improving, then more kids are moving to the right. They're moving from below basic toward advanced. or those MPI scores are not going to improve. So there's a collective movement in the right direction. That's what that essentially says. Over time, there's a collective movement. Don't you love student achievement? It's good stuff. On the secondary level, Jason's going to boil it down and make it really easy.
All right. On the secondary level, there's 15 subjects or grades tested, and out of those 15, we had 8 areas improved by 5 or more MPI, and out of that 8, we had 5 that were improved by 10 or more MPI, and 3 out of that improved by 15 or more MPI, and the golden standard are the 2 areas that improved by 25 or more MPI, and that was 8th grade math and biology, which both of those are extremely impressive, and kudos to those teachers. Other celebrations, out of the 4 core subjects, 3 of those 4, language arts, math, and science, all had improvements. Significant gains, once again, in biology, increase of 50.5 MPI from 2012 to 2013. Those, if anyone knows the science department, they work as a team at the high school. It's very impressive. And their scores actually this year were higher than their 2010, 2011 scores. So they're just doing a great job, and we're very proud of those stats there. On the middle school level, proud to say that all 3 middle schools improved in all 3 subjects. 8th grade cohorts of students improved from 6th to 8th grades in both English, language arts, and math. And then once again, back to 8th grade, math improved by more than 25 MPI. So good things going on at the secondary level. Lots of celebrations.
Anything else just with MAP and EOC kinds of questions? And then we'll get into a few other components of achievement.
Glad to see the middle schools are kicking it in.
It's
been a long time.
Glad to see the middle schools are kicking it in too.
I wanted to celebrate our successes, but where are we having trouble? What do we need to improve?
Good question.
One of the areas that really stood out to our team as we looked was our math at the elementary level. What we know is that we adopted a new program last year, Envision, that is more Common Core aligned. And so when we look at the higher level of thinking and the things that it's moving us towards with the new Missouri Learning Standards, we saw dips in our achievement that we weren't very happy about. And so we're going to work at improving that. But one of the things that we were able to do that DESE provides for us is a report on how Common Core or Missouri Learning Standards correlates with the GLEs that were tested, and we were very pleased with that report in how our achievement levels were. So what it showed us was that our students being taught with the Missouri Learning Standards are going to really have a nice foundation for when we get ready to take that next generation of assessments.
And one of the things we're doing at the elementary level is that I will be working with, we see this as a district thing, but we also want to drill down by school and look at where we're at by school and take that data. And so I'll be working with the elementary principals on their specific data through data teams in our collaboration meetings so that we can look at their specific data and determine where were their strengths and where our areas of growth need to be so that they can know specifically what they need to be working on for their particular school. So that's what we'll be doing at the elementary level.
One of the things, that if you don't mind me adding, I had an opportunity to go over and sit down with one of the members of the math department the other day and just visit about math issues and what they're seeing at the high school level. And one of the things we talked about from taking a systems approach, like we try to do with everything, is what can we do to shore up areas where we're weak? What are you seeing at the high school level? What skills are lacking? And and it's just one person's opinion, one math teacher's opinion, but we spent quite a bit of time talking about what he thought needed to be happening, and what I shared with him was exactly what you guys just talked about, is from a systems perspective, some of the things we're trying to do differently so that we're providing, when kids get to high school, they're better prepared and able to do the work they're going to be able to do. So it's a flow, it's a system that flows, and everything we do at the base levels, even early childhood, preschool, has an impact on those results in high school. And they all have to build on one another, and I think we're getting better and better aligned every time we get together and spend some time talking about that alignment, where the gaps exist, and how we can plug those holes.
Jason, how about secondary?
Secondary, I think Jim saw social studies is a weakness, and even before these scores out, we did some work with the social studies department, just curricular and alignment. So they're working hard, but obviously social studies was a concern on the scores for us.
And when the math one, or the Read 180 guy came, and we had such good progress in that, did we ever check out the Math 180?
We have looked at the Math 180. Lisa may be able to tell us where we're at on that. I'm not sure.
I have gone to conferences on Math 180. At this time, affording that program has been an expensive program. And so we have, though, put in the Read 180 and the System 44 into all of our elementary schools now.
And I want to make a point, if you'll remember when they presented, there was a couple of schools, and I think it was Kelsey and Columbia, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yep.
That didn't have the Read 180 program. It was a space issue, I think, mostly. And
It was a space issue.
we problem solved that and got that issue taken care of over the summer.
Yes, and so we've moved things around, and we're so pleased. We have some new Read 180 teachers. We actually have 8 new teachers on board, and it's an excellent program. And right at the moment, what we're doing is correlating our numbers from our Read 180 successes of last year with our MAP scores to see how the impact is from Read 180 students. How does that affect the MAP scores personally on a personal level for each child? So you'll be having those in your future.
Thank you.
There's several other areas that we want to share about, and most of them are at the secondary level. And your board goals had a lot of pieces in that secondary piece, and so we're going to jump into some of that. Some of these are directly related to the annual performance report that's part of MSIP, and some of them are not, and I'll kind of hit those. But Jason's gonna explain several of those at this point.
Okay, this is kind of new for the secondary level. Usually we think of ACT and then ASVAB for military. SAT we don't do a whole lot, but the Compass, based upon the new MSIP, all students are held accountable for taking some form of assessment, and you can see the 4 assessments there listed. And prior to 2012, these assessments we weren't accountable for it. So not every student had to take a form of assessment. Basically, what you had was students that were college-bound taking the ACT to prepare themselves for college, and that was, and your military students would take your ASVAB to prepare themselves for military, but that was the bulk of the assessments given. And now every student's responsible for taking an assessment. All these tests are aligned to be comparable to the ACT scoring, which is nice. To me, that's kind of like the reading scale when they say, hey, they're reading on a 3rd grade level. Everyone can kind of understand the ACT equivalency. And so points are generated by how students score based upon that equivalency, depending on what test they take. And you can see the point scale, and they have pretty high standards. If you look at the ACT equivalent for just the 1 point is scoring 22 to 26 on an ACT, which is that's a solid score. So you can look at those and see how points are accumulated. And so our expectation is that students take these assessments now, and we want as many points as possible, which means the higher they score either on the ACT or as an equivalency taking one of the other assessments, the better off we are. But that's also a challenge because that's new to us, and we haven't played by these rules before. So I think that'll be the whole nation whole state will get to deal with that.
One of the things that you might think about these numbers in relationship is to when we were all in school and we had the grade book, and so the teacher takes a grade on each of the different assignments. Essentially, each student is one of our assignments, and we're either going to get a 1.25, so we're going to get a little extra credit, or we're going to get 100%, or we'll get 75% for that kid, or we'll get 25%. So if their score is equivalent to less than an 18 on the ACT, then we get 25% for that kid, which we all know when you have a 25% in your grade book, that doesn't fare well, very well in the grade. And then there also is, if we didn't get that student tested for some reason, because, the ACT costs, the ASVAB is free, but it's certain timings and all of that hit. And the Compass is something that we've worked hard, Crowder has really helped us with. And then the SAT is almost more just for National Merit Scholars for us, because our colleges, really accept the ACT in our area. But if a student doesn't take one of those assessments, then we get a 0, like a missing assignment essentially. And so we know what that does in a grade book. And so those are kinds of ways to look at. This is a whole new kind of a system for us to be evaluated, and this is part of the Missouri School Improvement Program, the MSIP 5. And so we thought it was really important for you to understand, and when you realize that it didn't matter whether you took the ASVAB or you took the Compass or you took the ACT, they're making it the equivalent of the ACT. So really, a student needs to be at an 18 or higher, or the best we can get is 75%. So at an 18 or higher. So pretty high rigorous standards.
Here's a combination, obviously, they have to do these with graduate results and accountability for 100% students. And you can see the percentages highlighted and percent at or above state standard. So 2013's in the green.
And that state standard is going to be a moving target, which is why they call it state standard rather than this is the percentage that it has to be. And so that's another interesting complexity within MSIP 5.
What was the state standard?
Well, it's a little hard to define, and
Okay, so
it's
58.5, is that us?
That's us.
Okay.
These are our scores. Our scores improved in relationship to the percent that meets the state standard, but the state standard is going to be ever increasing.
Okay.
So
Can we back up just for 1 second? I want to clarify that, because I know we talked about that the ACT and the ASVAB and the Compass were goals that the board had discussed, but these points are assessed by the state, and so this encouragement of each student taking these tests is driven by the state's new requirements. Is that correct?
this is part of the MSIP 5, the Missouri School Improvement Program, 5th generation, essentially, like 5.0 maybe.
Okay.
But this is the way they give us points. And so really, if you want to get 100%, you have to have 100% of your kids achieve at the level of what would be at least a 22 on the ACT. I wouldn't think a lot of people probably wouldn't want their ACT score said, at this point. I think we're doing better than we've ever done in a lot of ways. But ACT is one of those things that's going to be a high measurement.
But additionally, it also encourages schools to keep track of, to kind of try not to let any students fall between the cracks.
Right.
By at least testing them, getting them certified and, assessed in some level.
Right. This
Some
holds
form.
accountability to your traditionally non-college bound students to still have a high standard of learning.
It's not a bad thing, it's a different thing. And we wanted you to see the rigor of it, because I think that once it put it in that, these were the ranges for the ACT, then everybody was kind of going, oh, wow, I know where I would fall, on that scale, so, very good.
Okay. FTC, Technology Skills Assessment. And these are the tests that Franklin Technology Center uses currently. In the past, what they've done is chosen assessments based upon the subject, and even within a content, let's say welding or business, there's multiple tests that they can choose from. They try to choose the one that aligns to their curriculum the best, which can be challenging. Through DESE, by 2015, I might be jumping ahead, all the assessments will have to be in industry-recognized credentials. I think that's the next slide. You can see our percentages. So currently, under the technology skills assessments, Franklin Technology chooses those assessments. Some of them are industry-recognized credentialed, others are not. In 2015, all of them must be, and what that means is that's the same test that an adult would take to be certified within that area. So the standard for assessments in Franklin Technology is going up as well.
And the footnote on that one is that those industry-recognized credential exams are part of the MSIP 5, and we're held accountable for that. And DESE still hasn't finalized the list of what is going to even be acceptable on that, so that's a very moving target at the moment as well.
So what you're saying is, on this assessment, one of our students would have to take the same test an adult would take to be certified, say, in HVAC. So if they want to be a certified HVAC employee of some company, they would take this certification test, and that's the same exam that our students will be required to take.
That's my understanding, yes. So, like
Steve-
Crowder, Vatterott.
Steve Reed's here, he may be able to help us clarify, because this is an area we're learning.
Very rigorous exams, they're the same exams that your auto mechanic from Goodyear is going to take to be able to be an ASE certified technician.
Right.
So, yeah, they're very strenuous tests and they're very difficult, but as they've tried to align, those tests are not aligned to our curriculum at this point.
Hey, Steve, can you come up here, please? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you.
DESE has not, they've, like they did before, they mandate something that you're going to do, and then they want to try to align the curriculum later on. They haven't got there yet.
Getting that grandbaby, he's a new grandpa. First time.
Is that some airtime?
That's
Oh, yeah.
born yesterday. When I was calling, saying, could you
Congratulations.
give me some data on the TSA?
But no, they're very tough, rigorous exams, and it's difficult because we have not, the curriculum's not aligned to the test at this point, so it's going to be a challenge to get those to that point, but 51% is not bad. We've checked across the nation, and the cut score is usually around 60, 65% for those tests.
For adults?
That's for
Yeah,
adults.
For adults, yeah.
Right.
So we think we're doing well, but when you see 51%, I know that when I got a grade of a 51%, or if I had, I'd probably have really freaked out, But we want to make sure that everybody understands. So WTI, Vatterott, Crowder, those kinds of programs that are those programs, they would be giving similar assessments, but they're giving them to adults. And so, same thing.
And it's just now become mandated that all students take those. In the past, you chose if you want to be certified. You can still pass the class and not be a certified individual. But now DESE is requiring all of them to take an industry-recognized credential.
And a lot of times our students would have completed the program and then gone to Crowder to refine those skills. Really, what it's saying is that the program that we're providing could be considered equivalent to Crowder if the student is mature enough to think and work on that level.
And we're in the process of articulating or dual crediting all those classes as well for those college courses.
So will they have to pass the certification test in order to pass the class?
No, we've never set that in place.
Is that what you were going to ask?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, yeah. So, no.
Okay.
Not at this point.
Congratulations, Steve.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
One
Thank
of the
you.
things we have to be careful about that passing the class based on the certification is that there are kids who are the mechanic's assistant.
Right.
And being in that class could be just as valuable for their life future as the kid who is going to be studying beside them who becomes the certified mechanic. And so if we get to the point where it's only the kids who could become certified and pass that test, then we end up saying, well, you can't be in that class because then.
Okay.
So we want to be careful that we're not taking it to the level where we're not letting kids who could also learn but may not meet that same standard or need more time to meet that standard.
I'll say this, I went over to Auto Tech, and I'm impressed, just the reading level of the stuff those kids have to do is amazing for a lot of those programs, so it's impressive. And Steve, by the way, he answered the phone when he got a call from Dr. Bessendorfer, right as he was at the hospital. That's how dedicated he is. He's got his grandmother.
He's like, she was just born, I just stepped out because it was you. Why? You need to not do that. So.
All right. Next slide. Work keys. This is an exciting. Jasper County becoming the first work-ready community in the nation.
That's awesome.
And it was through Franklin Technology's help with 129 seniors tested that became possible. So that's very exciting. It's the same assessment that adults use for work readiness or National Career Ready certification. And you can see the scores of our 129 seniors. And what that does is just shows what level of jobs that they would be qualified for within that industry based upon that assessment.
Wow. Congratulations.
You probably see a lot of, you might have heard Susan Adams talking about it. At Able Body, every person who's employed there has to take the work keys. So it's one of those things that
I would
this is.
say our chamber and our city would be very pleased with that staff, you would think.
I think we have a lot to be proud of on that. I mean, that's, anybody who I think is involved in the unemployment side of things, this is one of those options that they have as as a step in getting their unemployment and all of that, that work keys can be a piece. So this test is something we're giving to high school students, but people of all ages, into adulthood.
One of the things in the college and career ready piece that really excites me is that focus on beyond high school. And, we're really in the workforce and economic development business. I mean, ultimately, that's what we're responsible for. And really proud of the work that's gone on. And I know that the Chamber of Commerce was very involved in being the first, helping to make this first work-ready community piece come to be. And of course, some of you may have been there. The governor was here, and it's quite a big deal. And I just heard, I was at the Chamber of Commerce meeting on Monday, and the second workforce-ready community came on board, and I think it was West Virginia. So we're still the only one in the Midwest, but there's obviously a number of months behind us.
And
we're pretty proud of that.
The footnote on this one is that DESE has not decided to use a test like this to help evaluate us for MSIP. So we felt that when we give our report of achievement, we think this was important.
All right, ACT results. The average this year is 21.1, a slight decrease from last year's 21.6. We did have the largest number of students taking the ACT this year.
What's our average normally?
We're usually right around the state average.
No, of taking it.
Oh.
How many
students?
Percentage of?
percentage of? We're saying we're our largest group ever.
Right, I think it was about
That's about
4 or
50%.
5 more than in the past. I don't know that it was a ton of numerically. It was the largest class though that has. But that's a little higher than our normal numbers. We're usually mid-2s, I believe.
Okay.
So it's down, and we're already working on plans to get that up for next year. So
that would be another one of the areas that we would have shared.
yeah, Dr. Sked has already got a plan.
How do you plan to, what are some measures that you take to help improve those scores at the high school level?
There's a lot of strategy. Academics Plus is a class that we've offered, and that's been a strong foundation in scoring well. And so I didn't check the enrollment numbers for that, but if enrollment numbers drop in that could be some things. The other things like what we're planning on is looking at even practice tests prior. So getting some test familiarity and then having some coaching that goes along with that is, hey, here's where you went off. Because it's a time test and it's challenging. And so if you don't have good test taking strategies going into it, then you can maybe know the content but not make it through. So that's part of our strategy is offering looking at practice tests and having some skilled teachers like our Academics Plus teachers.
We have a debate up here at the front table whether or not you're supposed to circle B or C when you don't know the answer.
It's C.
Is it C?
As a matter of fact, if you guys ask me a question I don't know, I might just say C. So does that help?
But we have strategies in place to help the kids improve those numbers. I think that's what we're driving at.
We're right. We even had conversations on it today. So.
Awesome.
Advanced placement exams. This is an exciting topic because you can look over the years and see the increased number of tests. And we already offer a lot of advanced placement opportunities for our students, and we've continued to offer more classes in that. And you can see that in a number of tests given. The blue indicates students who earn college credit by scoring high enough on the test. You have to score 3 or better on an advanced placement test. Those are rigorous tests or rigorous classes. So you can see the results there.
Can they take the advanced placement test more once?
Yeah, it's only offered one time a year, yes.
Right, okay.
So, and they're stringent on timing and
She asked, can you take it more? You can only
no,
take it once.
take it once.
Yeah, okay.
So, but 115 credits earned in 2013. And we paid the cost of that test as a district, so
What's an average
that's
college
free
credit?
credit for those kids that earned it.
And then dual credit. Dual credit's always a win. We have great dual credit classes, and you can see the number of credits. I think that's probably half credits earned. I'm guessing that's classes, but it's a significant number. 98.3 success rate out of 301 classes offered, 296 credits earned. So.
Wow. And now the students do pay for that one, but they pay tuition at a reduced rate, significantly reduced, so it's a great deal for parents.
And
Oh, that's
afford to
right.
pay, they can use the innovative campus grant.
I'm glad you remembered
Get it
that.
paid for.
A new thing we have, so if you can't afford it, we can find the ways to make it happen. So that kind of gets us to the annual performance report then and the MSIP 5. I know last year I probably talked too much about the big changes from MSIP 4 to MSIP 5. It is very different and the reports are different, and so I wanted you to know some of that. It is used for our accreditation determination. You know, we used to have distinction in performance, and MSIP 5 actually does have an accreditation level for distinction. But those criteria are not defined yet. And so there's a committee working on those definitions and what it's going to take in order to do that. But with that, I think that it's important to realize that in the old MSIP 4 system, we looked at how did we do at the elementary levels, how did we do at the middle school levels, how do we do at the high school level, and you would show whether you had growth in those subcategories of achievement. Now with the new MSIP 5, it is how did you do in English language arts as a whole district, counting from 3rd grade all the way through high school. Same thing for math, science, and social studies. And so it's an overall achievement for the district as opposed to within those grade spans. I think it's important to note, and I've been asked by 2 reporters now, is this a good tool for parents to use to compare schools? And my answer, sadly, is no. And I think that when I share the information with you in the next slide, you'll understand why. But I don't think it's not a good tool because you can earn points based on how high your achievement or your results are, but you can also earn equally a lot of times a number of points for improving. And so sometimes those numbers might reflect improvement and the scores are actually lower than another school who didn't get the improvement gains, but they had the status there. And so you're gonna find when we start reporting annually on MSIP 5, there's gonna be a lot of fluctuation from year to year because a little slight 0.1% difference or 1/10 of a point difference could mean the difference between 0 points and 7.5 points in the thing, or 20.5 points in the formula. And so it's really different, and it's harder to take these 5 big standards and make them into something that is comparable from one school to the next. It's important to note that this is the first year baseline data of a decision for accreditation that will begin in 2015. And so it's the first year that we're accountable to the data. Last year we had some data, and this is kind of what it might look like if we did it today, even though they didn't even have all the data to be able to say. So this is how we turned out. There are 5 standards. You can see the 5 listed on the table there. There's points possible. You can see that they're weighted in certain different places, like academic achievement is the most highly weighted with 56 points, but it's also the same thing in subgroup achievement. So the No Child Left Behind component is in that standard number 2. College and Career Ready is where the ASVAB, ACT, Compass piece is going to come in. It's also where our grads are going, and are they in college? Are they being placed in their work? Attendance is one. Attendance, though, changed from ADA, where what's the average daily attendance, to what percentage of our kids have 90% or better, and then graduation rate. And I think that if you look at our percentage of points earned, you would think that we did phenomenal in graduation rate and that we must have a fabulous graduation rate. We did a great job and we made great improvements, and we're really proud of those improvements. But we all know sitting around this table that our graduation rate is not where we want it. So if you were a parent moving to the area and you pulled up this report off of the DESE website, you might decide, oh, academic achievement is lower than another one, or it's higher than another one, or whatever. Well, it's the same difference. It's the same sort of a difference in that it can be deflated as equally as it can be inflated. Just like our graduation rate must look like it's great, and our achievement may not look like it's as well. It's probably in the same ballpark for a lot of them. I haven't looked at all the area ones. I haven't had a chance, but it's a little bit deceiving. Is what I want to tell you. It's not necessarily what I would want you to. I want you to hear the things we said up front, where we really dissect the information and tell you that, than to just say yes or no on this. Does that make sense to you?
Because it's a 69% academic, but 100% graduation rate, so how does that happen?
Exactly. And so it's, it just.
70% people learn, and then, but we graduate 100% of them.
And I know sometimes it sounds like, well, the assistant superintendent's just trying to make this look like it's not a big deal. I'm not. I'm saying it measures and it gives a reflection of a certain thing that may or may not be really what it's intended to reflect. And so the scores may be a little bit deceiving to the public if you can't see what's underneath them.
And it's a much more volatile system than the previous systems too, so that's something to just be aware of. There'll be districts jumping, I mean, it's
I
the
do like
the
that
span.
we're accredited.
Yep, that is good news.
Yeah, so we would be
Yeah,
fully accredited, and that's not a concern. And currently, there is no level higher than accredited because there's no defined criteria for the other. Do we want those percents to go up? Well, heck yes. Of course we do. Are we going to work hard to make that happen? You bet we are. But is any of this a concern to me seeing it like this? No. Are there other things we're working on in the previous information that we shared? Absolutely. And so that's kind of where that's at. So we would be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Are they still tweaking the formulas, do you know, at the state level for this, or what's going on with that?
I think the answer is yes. It's just like graduation rate. It's 30 points. There was talk in a meeting. I serve on a state committee that's looking at that, and there was talk in that committee that they really didn't want 30 points to just be weighted on just graduation rate, that one number. They really kind of were thinking 20 points for one part and 10 points for another, or 10, 10, and 10, but they can't seem to figure out and agree on what they can find to measure for that other side. Because one of the things that I was saying is that if all you're going to look at is the cohort graduation rate for those, well, one group who graduated in 4 years, there's little incentive for school districts to pull back that kid other than just because they're ethically do what's right for kids. And, we do that. We're going to pull back any dropout that we can possibly find and keep them in there. We're going to keep that fifth-year senior. We're going to keep that sixth-year senior, whatever it takes. And so I've been supporting the idea of some sort of measure that kind of pushes the idea that schools should be trying to catch those kids before they're 21 and getting that high school diploma. And it's really hard to do because what that looks like in Joplin and what that looks like in Diamond are really different things. And again, those percentages and those averages, when you look at just the percentage of kids that are graduating, it's a lot easier for a small district to make a quick gain, and it takes a long time for a large district to make a big gain.
I serve on the Commissioners Advisory Council, and I was up there actually today. Spent 6.5 hours driving for a 1 hour and a half meeting, but this topic came up about the tweaking, and there is still some tweaking going on. The focus is starting to shift towards the accredited with distinction criterion, though, and looking at what it takes to become eligible for accredited with distinction. So in the old model, if you achieved a certain level, which I believe was 13 out of 14 points, it had to be the right 13 out of 14 points, you were accredited with distinction. And in the new model, the 90% number where you see we're at 78%, so we're 12% away from that, not far. The 90% level will make you eligible for accredited with distinction, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you will. They're still determining what those above and beyond criterion are. So that's just another example of how they're raising the bar in terms of what excellence looks like in the state of Missouri. And as we all know, we also have the second most rigorous test in the nation. The bar's already high, and they were talking today about what's happened in Kansas when they've shown 88% proficient and advanced in the model that they created post No Child Left Behind, and how they're falling on their face now as a result. So I'm hopeful that all the work that we're doing currently, you heard Sarah talk about the IBD reports and what that's looking like currently in terms of the Missouri Learning Standards and how we're performing based on the few standards that are being tested currently, which is very encouraging. The curriculum is aligned. We've got Missouri Learning Standards aligned curriculum in 3rd and 4th grade math now, as opposed to MAP aligned items. And so the drop in test scores, that's, I think, a natural thing at that level. Those teachers have been working very hard picking up the new curriculum and running with that. Proud of the work they're doing. I think that we're seeing within the MAP test itself some initial indications that we're on the right track in terms of the performance of our kids as it relates to the Missouri Learning Standards. So had we shown improvement in the Missouri Learning Standards, Kim and I are on the MAP testing at 3rd, 4th, and fifth grade. As Angie and I were talking today, it's possible we may have been above that 90% range, just that may have put us over the top to been in that 90% range, being eligible for accredited with distinction. So we're not far, but again, this is a very volatile system, and so we're going to have to watch it like a hawk. And I've got a great team, and we got some staff, teachers, and staff out there that are working hard, and I think we've got some great systems in place to get us there.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you all very much.
House Bill 253?
Okay, mine will really be 10 minutes, I promise. This is going to be a quick presentation. Paul's taking the lead on this. I know many of you are familiar with House Bill 253. Missouri School Boards Association has been, actually Paul's going to need this.
Actually, you do. He's got his own.
Oh, he does? Oh, wow. Okay, thank you. It's been a hot topic for since the end of the last legislative session, and then the governor's veto of House Bill 253. Felt like it was important for this board to understand the potential impact of House Bill 253. It's been a topic of conversation in school districts across the state, and Paul's going to give us a brief overview of House Bill 253, and we can have some discussion about the bill and the impact on the schools.
Thank you, Dr. Huff. There's a lot of information out there since the Congress closed in May, and I accessed what the Missouri Association for School District Administrators had participated in a seminar that brought Mr. James Moody and Associates to present. He's the former state budget director, state of Missouri, and has been in analyzing governmental financials and those kind of bills since he left that office. There's a few slides here we're going to look at from him, and then we're going to boil it down to a few slides specific to Joplin schools and have some discussion. Again, this is the James Moody and Associates presentation. He's hearing that with some surplus projected for this year, pulling out of the Great Recession, finally that there's an attitude of everything's coming up roses, indicates not true. Most of this increase comes from sale of stocks and that people sold late in 2012, so they spiked up because they're anticipating increased tax rates. So the revenue from individual income tax grew by 3.5%. Sales tax have grown 1.3%, which is a pretty paltry number. His analysis and other groups I've seen have come up with similar analyses on the benefit of this bill should it override the governor's veto. The status of the bill currently, it was passed in May. The governor vetoed it, and with the special session that's being called, I believe, for September 11th, the Congress is threatening an override if they get the votes of the governor veto. So that's where it stands right now. And it was a pretty close vote in May, whenever it was voted on. So it's very close in this next session if it does come before the Congress. But the numbers we've been hearing in the media were somebody who has net income over $500,000 would have a tax savings of $2,400. Of course, those are the ones kind of representing small business. And the implication here is even somebody with that kind of income, having a small business, what can you do with $2,400 in terms of hiring new people? The implication is they're not much. And for the vast majority of Missourians who it is being touted as we would all get some tax reduction for taxable income for a family size of 3 or 4 on there, 48,000 would get a sum total of about $6. So, the idea being it doesn't take a lot of money to be able to make a broad statement. There's discussions of triggers in the bill that protect revenue from being handed out that we don't have. But Mr. Moody's analysis is there is no trigger for a provision in the bill that says that taxable income would reduce over time by 50%. In other words, you don't have to pay income taxes on half of your earnings today that might be there in the next 5 or 10 years, indicating no trigger to stop that. The second bullet point, there's a 0.5 percentage point reduction in income tax rates tied to the passage of that Marketplace Fairness Act, or excuse me, fairness reference is the internet sales tax that's being discussed, has been for years. I mean, there is no current internet sales tax, but the federal government's seriously looking at initiating one. That's the name of what it's referred to, Marketplace Fairness Tax. So that bullet point there says that if the federal government passes that, that makes all states subject to it, that there's an anticipated drop in income tax rates of 0.5% that will happen, that has nothing related to a trigger. It just will happen, according to Mr. Moody. The only other triggers are for the tax rate cut, which the middle class would be subject to, relative back to the $6 savings for that 4-person family. That would be subject to a trigger. Again, if the internet sales tax passes, there's no other trigger. There's the fiscal note in the bill assumes general revenue of 342 to 542 million. Mr. Moody's indicating there's no reputable study or basis for this number. That's the increase in revenue that's it's putting out there. Most reputable study would indicate the general revenue increase is only $80 million. And his calculations indicate that the tax cut would leave a $250 million or $250 million hole in the budget. And long-term ramifications, middle class will understand, feel like they were perhaps burnt by this if it passes, and then they'll want tax relief for themselves if they're looking at that $6 they got for their $48,000 income, and others got at the high end of the scale got a lot more. They'll realize eventually the unfairness of that. Taxpayers with capital gains, rental and royalty income and farm income will also feel the same way. Moody and Associates indicates tax relief for the wealthy cannot be undone without a vote of the people. State services across the board, mental health, other state services, education certainly will suffer, and chaos could ensue. Now, this is one of the most important points I understand in his presentation, that if Congress, which has the authority to pass this like it did in the last session, a tax cut could happen. However, indication here is that if, let's just say, we found out ourselves in
Quick question.
Yes.
Is it the Congress or the House?
Well, the Congress is who passed this.
Okay.
State legislature.
Yeah.
State legislature.
Yeah, state Congress, I'm sorry. It's state, yeah, legislature. That even though Missouri Congress passed this, it would take a vote, and let's say in 3 to 5 years, this slide is trying to point out, if the cuts were too large and we found out, well, state services suffered too much, education, the income's not coming in like we thought, new jobs didn't follow after this cut like we were hoping, spur business, then that would say there need to be, let's put back some of the tax revenue that we lost by the cut. The only way to do that would be a statewide vote for all of us in the state to vote a tax increase on all of us. That'd be how it'd be corrected. It wouldn't be the state Congress correcting what the state Congress passed. It has to go to a vote of the people, which is a much bigger hill to climb than a relatively small Congress, is what's implied here. So getting on to the Joplin local issues here, we see the Missouri Association of School Boards, again, is presenting 3 options for anticipated budget implications. Our current revenue projections without any losses would be just over $20 million. But if the override of the governor's veto takes place in September, the best case scenario would be a $1.7 million loss. And some estimates are such that the worst case snenario could really bring a $3 million loss to us. These are numbers that the association has put out, and they've done this. They've run all 500 school districts in the state, but those numbers relative to Joplin schools, if the state Congresses does override the governor's veto. Another thing that would go away, there's a current tax exempt status for college textbooks, and I believe also prescription drugs have a tax exempt status. So if the veto was overridden, those would go away. And the textbook piece, of course, would make college more expensive for our graduates. Support for mental health, another area impacted by the cuts would be mental health and autism services would be cut in funding. And again, that would impact our special needs students and their families. Bond issue impact, if you give away more money and you don't replace it by growing the revenue pie, like businesses just don't take off and start going great guns and replace the revenue that was given out in the cuts, then the bond rating agencies, Moody's, Standard & Poor's, those type of rating agencies that did downgrade the federal government a couple of years ago, they rate governments too because we issue a lot of debt. That's what it takes to build these buildings. Our bonds, and the indication is it can move from AA. I believe Kansas had this happen, AAA to AA, and that would be add $900,000 in increased interest expense that we would be incurring for every $10 million in bonds. So for our last bond issue of $62 million, that'd be $5.4 million more in interest our bondholders would have to pay and that would make our bonds less attractive, more expensive.
Paul, I talked to Greg Bricker today in Kansas. Similar legislation. They went from a AA rating to a AA minus rating. So they haven't been AAA for a while, I guess. But the same impact.
They downgraded, just haven't been AAA. And part of, again, I'm not an expert on this topic, but I know Missouri for the last, when Kansas 2 or 3 years ago cut their income tax rates for, I guess, business and individuals, Missouri got very concerned about it and about losing business to the neighbor. You know, it got border city and Springfield's sort of a border city, Kansas City, and this did lead to this bill passing originally, the thought of losing business to other states. It should be a concern. But Kansas is, as I read, is feeling the negative impacts of their cuts are not being followed up with the explosive growth in business that they hope to replace those revenues so that they would grow the revenue pie. So they're having to, I read, they had to make a cut, $700 million cut in their budget recently, and they're incurring this downgrade in their bond credit rating. So, you know, when one thing happens bad, usually you kind of get the things kind of pile on you because of what you're faced with. So that's it for the presentation. And a lot of the school districts have passed some resolutions by their boards or sent their legislators in their areas letters expressing a desire to vote no on the topic. We could do either one of those, both of those, neither of those, but Dr. Huff wanted to kind of lead some discussion about where we go from here and try to answer questions that you may have.
I appreciate everybody's time and attention to the matter tonight. It's a big one for us, obviously, because we're still trying to climb out of our post-disaster scenario, and we build a budget this coming school year that's potentially going to be impacted by about $700,000 that we weren't anticipating as a result of the withholdings, as there's anticipation of the possibility of this bill passing, or the veto being overridden. And at the end of the day, we try not to get involved in politics. I mean, that's something that I've always tried to avoid. But from our perspective, and Paul and I have spent a lot of time talking about this, is that the end result could be a very negative result for our school district in terms of current and future revenues. And we just set our tax rate this evening, lowest operating levy as required by law, and we're proud of that fact. We run efficiently, but and the other thing I think is an important point. This is just me personally. As I look at the situation, my opinion is, and I'm not a professional by any means, but I think most of us would agree that our Missouri economy is still fragile. We're still crawling out of this mess of economic disaster we've been in for the last number of years, and I'm not sure we're there yet. And my fear is that we're giving away potential revenue now, and then things don't come back. We're going to end up in a deeper hole than we were or would have been had we not held on. And Paul and I talked about where's the fire right now. I mean, what's the sense of urgency for this bill, and why does it have to pass right now? Can we not wait a couple of years? If it's a good idea now, it'll be a good idea 2 or 3 years from now. when maybe the state's in a better fiscal position, and maybe the economic outlook, which is still uncertain, is in a better position as well. It's open to board discussion. That's an action, any type of action on the part of the board. I mean, that's obviously you guys' decision as to whether or not you want to weigh in on that as part of the as part of the school district. There's about 70 other districts in the state that have at this point, as well as some chambers of commerce and city councils and others. But open for discussion.
Have you had any conversations with Bill White, Ron Richard, any of our people that represent us to get their side? I can't imagine, based on what I've seen, that anybody could support that, knowing what's going to happen to us. So
The ones I've talked to don't believe those numbers are true.
There's two sides.
Yeah,
that's the rub.
Yeah.
And I would say that
they have helped us.
there's probably something here in the middle that's the truth. I don't know what that is. What I think that most everybody that I've talked to, and I've spent most of my time with Charlie Davis, he's a great guy, and Charlie's always very responsive, and when I've talked to Charlie, I think that there are some flaws in the bill, and the conversation is that they'll just pick, we can do this, the triggers, everything will be okay, but the flaws in the bill we can fix later. And, that concerns me. I see what's happening across the state line in Kansas. They're fighting that same battle right now. And if it was, my opinion is, if it's good in philosophy, good in theory, and it might work, maybe next year is a better year, let's give it another year, fix the bill where they know it needs fixed, and avoid, and as I understand it, it takes a vote of the people, does it not, Paul, as was indicated in the presentation, to make changes once it passes. And so now you've got a referendum to make the changes. So the bill moves forward as presented, and then a referendum is required in order to make the changes at that point. And I think that if it's got the flaws now and they know that, and they've still got the votes, fix it. Let's bring it back next year, bring it to the table. And if it's good for Missouri, I'm all for it. But as the bill stands right now, it scares me enough that I felt like it was important to bring it to this board this evening to have a conversation about that in lieu of the veto session. Is it September 11th actually?
I believe it starts 11th September.
September 11th.
Well, I definitely agree with Jim from what we just saw. I mean,
What are the pluses?
$6.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, why did the governor veto it? What was his reason for vetoing it?
There's a website.
Okay.
It's growmissouri.com if you want to check it out. They give the other side of the issue. Basically counters. I mean, you can go to the polar opposite end of everything that Paul talked about tonight, and that's what you get. And I think that again, I'm relatively conservative myself, but I'll try to look at both sides, and there's always middle ground, and I can't help but think that the answer lies somewhere in the middle, as far as what the real truth is in all this. They're talking about, I'll just give you an example. Passage of House Bill 253 will hurt education. That's the myth, okay? From the website, it says Missouri schools are being funded at the highest levels in our state's history, and the state currently has approximately $400 million in surplus revenue. However, if Missouri remains one of the worst states in economic performance, the state could lose revenue for schools as a result of businesses and individuals flocking to other states. Hence, we've got the governor from the state of Texas coming to Missouri soon to have that conversation in Missouri. Alternately, once House Bill 253 is fully phased in, it will represent $1 billion of growth in our state economy and generate at least $300 million in new revenues for things like education, which Paul pointed to some numbers that the Moody report said there's no reports out there that indicate that's the case. Talks about leadership in both House and Senate are committed to funding education and have passed House Bill 253 and plan to draw more opportunities to our state. However, education is being hurt by the withholdings that Governor Nixon has levied against education in this fiscal year, and those he is threatening in the future because he does not want to relinquish control of the surplus revenues that Missourians earned. So, again, you got both extremes of polarizing views on the issue, and there's no doubt, there's politics involved. Enough said. The question is, is there a potential threat to the school district based on our analysis. I think Jim Moody has always given good information. It's one of the most respected reports in the state. Legislators do pay attention to the Moody report, and he's concerned, therefore I'm concerned.
The Jim Moody report is based on actual figures but that the GrowMissouri.com is speculating that these things will happen.
I think there's probably a lot of speculation on both ends.
sides. Okay.
There's a lot of outside money and a lot of outside influence, certainly that's pushing this this initiative, and so there's politics at play in a big way.
Dr. Huff gave the kind of the highlights there, the proponents of the original bill. Of course, they would also be supporting the override of the veto, if you follow through the chronology there. But Ms. Sharp asked about the governor's veto and, what did he support? I'll just read, he's got 8 or 10 points here, supported by 2 or 3 paragraphs of data, but I'll read his bolded headline points on why he why he wrote his veto. And that is, number 1, Missouri is already a low-tax state. Number 2, the fiscal note dramatically understates the cost of the bill. So there's the governor saying that the note in the bill, and all bills have to have a fiscal note, is way off, which is, a lot of the governor's points were reflected in Mr. Moody's presentation. Number 3, the bill would irreparably harm education and vital public services. Number 4, the bill would increase taxes on prescription drugs, as we mentioned. It would increase taxes on textbooks. The bill's revenue triggers do not apply to 2 of the most costly provisions. As we showed you there, 2 big items are not protected by a trigger. The one on the income taxes to people earning $48,000 to get $6 of benefit, that has a trigger. There's a protection against that happening. The so-called triggers may provide a false sense of security. The bill rewards economically inefficient activity. The bill would create uncertainty for existing investments. And the bill, number 10, the bill would make our tax code less fair. Signed, Jay Nixon.
So what's your recommendation to this board?
Again, I'm very concerned about the potential impact. I think that the message to our representatives from this body, you're an elected body as well, would probably be appreciated. I don't know where all of our legislators stand currently. You know the politics of this area just like I do. But I think, at least expressing our concerns, I think we have at least a responsibility to express our concerns in whatever way this board sees fit. A couple options. There's a resolution that has been adopted by a number of school boards across the state. If you're not comfortable with the resolution, the other option is, we can just write a letter noting our concerns. That would be, a formal letter just saying, hey, this is the way this is how we feel about it, and these are some of our concerns. The mental health piece concerns me considerably, simply because we're still in the midst of dealing with our crisis, and I know Phil and his Ozark Center is heavily engaged in mental health in this area, and we need all the mental health support we can get here, and that's a statewide, nationwide problem, and I hate to see cuts in any of those areas impact us in some way, shape, or form. And I think it's just important for us from time to time to just share those concerns, and we certainly support our local legislators. They've been very good to us, no question about that. But this is one of those issues I think that's going to have a direct impact. Potentially could have a direct impact on our schools and our kids. And if we don't stand up and say something, and it comes to be, then where are we? Why do we exist as a governing body?
One thing I would add about legislation in the past, there was a comment made, and we've read in the news media accounts that if this does have flaws or it's not quite what we want, we can go back and fix it. And of course, Mr. Moody's saying that the we is the people. The entire state will vote on this, including those that got the $6 benefit and may be upset. We'll be asking them to increase their own taxes. So that, that's a big hill to climb there. That's the fix. But speaking of another tax bill that passed back in 2003 or 4, the current foundation formula that we get paid on with the 500 other school districts was predicated on, at some point, they had a 7-year phase-in, which ended, I think, back in 10 or 11. It started back in 2004 or 5. because it was going to bring more funds to school districts, and it did. The education fund grew, but it was hoping to be funded eventually at 100% if the economy got strong enough and there was enough money coming in the state coffers. That was the approach. Well, the Great Recession happened in 2008 or 9, never got to 100%. I believe last year we were paid at 92.5% of what a fully funded formula should pay, along with everybody else in the state. When you don't have enough, you prorate down to what you have, because different from the federal government, the state does have to balance its budget, which is a good thing, but we never have reached 100% as a state, so education has been short by 7% even today, which is about $600 million as a state that we're not paying toward education if we were fully funded based on 8 or 9, 10-year-old legislation. So there's an approach there that's currently we're living under that's not been fulfilled due to the numbers not coming together. And now we're presented with this new opportunity on top of that.
I'd just like to say, I wouldn't mind writing a letter. I don't want to do the resolution, but I'd be happy to throw out that if we wanted to do a letter from the board to the appropriate people,
Is that a
sharing our
motion?
concerns. Does it need to be a motion, or just, are you just asking for our opinion?
I would entertain a motion.
Well, and I think along those lines, it might behoove us to also address that while all 8 points that the governor listed for his veto may have personal impact on us as individuals, as a board, it seems to me that the only things that we need to be that we should address would be things that affect the schools directly, the school district directly, funding and mental health services.
Student mental health, yes. So I'd make a motion
I'll second that.
that we would write a letter that, from our concerns with things that relate to schools,
Okay, so
education or mental health, or as Don.
That's a motion by
suggested.
Ms. Sharp, seconded by Mr. Steele. Any further discussion? Please vote.
Yes.
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 Yes. Public comments?
Okay. Really quickly, there was an article, it was well written, Emily, thank you, regarding public comments. There's some concerns or confusion about how we do public comments as a school board. Wanted to cover that policy briefly. John's here. We're going to have him visit briefly with you. He's promised me a 1-minute synopsis of we'll see. I've yet to see that happen. But a 1 minute in an attorney's world is different than 1 minute in mine. I've learned that. So John, I'm going to turn it over to you. If you don't mind doing the intro, then I'll flip through some slides here really quick and explain a few things.
No problem. The law in the state of Missouri does not require you to have any kind of public comment section. The only thing that you are required to do is to do business in the open, to do business publicly, to provide a place, and Joplin Schools does more than that. We're broadcast on television, and we allow the public and bring them in and encourage them to come. And then you also have a policy that allows for comments on agenda items, which is over and above what the law requires.
Woo, 30 seconds.
Wow, that was impressive. Now you put the pressure on.
Also, is there a way that you can ask to be put on the agenda also if you have something that you want to discuss?
Yes, I was limited in time, but the policy actually goes further and allows you to address all school board members. You provide on your webpage email links. You can also request an item be placed on the agenda. All of that is things that this board has chose to do to communicate to the public and allow the public an opportunity to communicate with you. None of that is required under the law.
Okay, so just running through a few slides that we put together here. There's actually 7 opportunities for public input in board meetings, and I know the board already realizes this. This is probably as much for the community as anything. We do have a grievance procedure that's established through policy. The board, as part of policy, believes that many issues can be resolved through communication with teachers, administrators, and other staff at the lowest levels possible. And so sometimes, and we've had an incident here recently, and I'll just, Jeff, you got a phone call or an email from a parent related to a transportation issue, we got, they wanted to speak to the board about the issue. How do we address the board? Jeff called me. We jumped on it. Jason and the transportation department were all over it. And I received an email tonight from Ron Wilkin, our area supervisor, the parent that we'd worked with, and sent a letter, thank you letter. This has never happened, to the governor, thanking him for letting them know what we've been doing here in Joplin and how we supported their family and how much they appreciate the work that we did. Wow. So we were able to, alleviate that problem at the lowest level possible, and it doesn't have to always reach the school board, but there is a process that a person can go through if they don't get satisfaction at the various levels through that process. Number 2, written correspondence. All board members, I think, have received correspondence at some point or another. Written correspondence may be directed to the board through the superintendent, which happens for consideration at a meeting. Copies of all correspondence directed to the board will be made available to all board members, which we do. When we receive a letter that's addressed to the board, we scan it in and send it to you all so that you have those. Agenda items. Item number 3, any member of the public who wishes to have an item placed on the agenda will present the request in writing to the superintendent or designee. Must be received 5 days prior to the meeting so that we can prepare for the meeting. The board reserves the right to impose reasonable restrictions on the number of items presented. So if somebody brings a laundry list and says, I want to talk about these 10 things, we may say, no, let's keep it to 1 this month, or 2. We've got a long agenda. The number of spokespersons. We can also determine how many people are allowed to speak to a particular item. The allotted speaking time, which we've established as 3 minutes. The reschedule or ask to reschedule that particular item for the next meeting. As an additional board bullet point, within the policy, the board may refuse to address an issue that has not gone through the appropriate grievance procedure. Again, trying to get those issues resolved at the lowest level possible, because at the end of the day, we're going to be the ones administratively that have to fix the problem anyway. And so this board's always been really good about redirecting those concerns to the administration so we can work through those. Number 4, public hearings. The board holds public hearings to receive input on matters of concern to the community. Examples include, like what we did tonight, annual tax rate hearing, which gives folks the opportunity to come, and correct me if I'm wrong, Pat, but I think that they don't even have to sign up to speak at a hearing. They can just come and speak at a hearing. And so we have that opportunity for people that have concerns about the tax rate, and this evening we went through all the appropriate postings. We didn't have anybody that came and spoke to that issue. Our annual school calendar adoption, we have a hearing, special hearing for that became a mandate, I think, just, I don't know, it's been the last 6-7 years, I think, that became law. And then we also have special hearings, redistrict hearing, March of 2013 is an example of opportunities the board has given to the public on issues of concern. Public comments. We also, number 5, have a specifically designated time set aside for public comments at regular meetings of the Board of Education. This board had chosen at one point in time, if I remember right, after I came here, public comments were at the very end of the board meeting, and this board chose to move that up prior to to the consent agenda so that people had the opportunity to speak to anything that was on the agenda before an actual vote was made. So that was a good move on the part of the board. But again, those following guidelines apply: establishing a time limit for public comment period. No individual will be permitted to speak more than once during that period. We establish a uniform time limit for fairness for each speaker, which is 3 minutes, and we keep that public speaking part only to those items posted on the agenda. And again, an agenda item can be requested to be posted by a community member if they so choose, but it needs to follow those procedures that we talked about earlier. Communication with the Board of Education, which I know happens as well. You go to Joplin Schools website, www.joplinschools.org, click on the Board of Education link, and it'll bring you to this good-looking group here. And their email contact as well as their phone numbers are posted, and that happens. So that's one way they can contact. And then item 7, opportunities for public input. We have community involvement in decision-making. It's in policy. We want community members involved in decision-making. We have multiple opportunities. We have special committees, which include strategic planning team, action teams, facility planning teams, design teams for new construction, and we also have Right Future Site Councils even at the local level if they want to have input as to what's going on inside of schools as well. So there's lots of opportunities for people to get involved and for people to have their voices heard so they can feel like their voice is valued in the Joplin schools. So I'll just, that's a quick presentation. That's our public comments policy in a nutshell. We do have 7 ways, I believe, that we have that allow for open dialogue and opportunities for the community to get involved in our schools. John, anything you want to add to that?
Again, I think a lot of districts don't have as many opportunities as the Joplin schools has. Not that it matters what other districts do, but the Joplin schools gives plenty of chances for people to come and be heard.
Also, I called Susan Goldhammer, who's the attorney with MSBA, Missouri School Boards Association, about this topic. And one of the things that she recommended was that as with the board members, and I know several of us have already made this transition with the new website, is that we also have a school email at joplinschools.org that our email goes through. And not our personal email account. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that was one of the recommendations that Susan made to us.
So again, if you'd like to do that, I think the best point of contact to make that happen would be Kelly. Is that right? Who does the?
Kim.
She take care of the emails, changing the emails, or Calista? Okay, Calista says it's me. So Calista Rader will do that for you. Any other questions or comments?
I think people find that we're very accessible in the community.
Well, I know you are, because
We
I
hear a
talk
lot.
to you regularly
Yeah.
about some of those conversations, so, very good.
You didn't even list the folks I see at the store.
And me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I should have added Walmart to that
Or
list.
ice cream.
Yeah, or ice cream, absolutely. Is it okay to move on? All right, construction update. Yeah.
All right, we'll get started with the high school. HME, our structural steel contractor, is currently working in areas C and E where they're detailing, completing the decking, and some Nelson stud work. Branco today had poured the 3rd level in area E west half, where Thursday they'll complete the other half. Branco also completed the last pour for the FEMA walls in area A and are currently working on the FEMA walls in area L, which is your auxiliary gym area. They're also working on the grade beams and footings in K and L, the auxiliary and main gym areas, as well as starting the orchestra pit in the PAC. Area D is kind of where we've got everybody right now. All of our MEP trades are currently working on overhead MEP items. We've got the fire sprinkler contractor on site. He's starting to run his main lines overhead. PCI, the drywall contractor, is working on the exterior and interior metal stud work. And DH Pace, which is our general trades contractor, is completing the roof blocking as well as the in-wall wood blocking. They probably have it done now, but as I left the site today, the roofing contractor was unloading materials so that we can start to prepare to dry in the roof in area D. And Emery Sap, which is currently working on the storm line work, is in package 4. The mason is also in area D, working on the restroom CMU block walls, as well as the block elevator shafts. And the hot topic is the micropiles. So that update is that the micropile contractor, through Branco's contract, is scheduled to arrive at the site on September 4th. They are currently discovered or Anderson has recommended that we investigate a few more areas, including A, G, H, J, and K, doing some additional exploratory work, looking for some mine caps, as well as determining the extent of some fault lines, and that fault line is over in the gym area, just making sure that we're taking the correct actions to structurally support the building. There are a total of, that we've identified to this point, there's approximately about 100 micropiles that we need to add to the project. Approximately 48 of those in area G, which is basically the heart of the building, if you will, the central plant. approximately 55 in Area A, which is the PAC, and approximately, 2 currently in Area K, which is the gymnasium, and H. And right now, while we're doing the additional exploratory work for some additional features, we're going to keep the contractor moving forward so as not to cause any more additional delays, get him working on the project while we're identifying these other items so that he doesn't have to demobilize and we can keep the work moving forward. Again, as we reported before, the full extent of delays caused by this impact, we're still reviewing. We do know that we've already established, some time ago that we knew the PAC was going to fall short of the start of the 2014 school year, but a couple of the other areas, we're not there yet, but are very critical, getting close to the start date. So the full impact we'll not know until the micropile contractor is done. We're still hopeful that that process moves forward and quickly. We've made means to bring in a second drilling rig so that the areas such as G, which is the 40-some odd micropiles, as well as Area A, try to take that installation time down by providing the second rig. We anticipate that that process takes anywhere from, I'll say, 3 to 5 weeks in Area G. So hope to save that or make up that amount of time by doing it concurrently in A. We anticipate that they can do approximately 3 to 5 micropiles a day, and they're on board to help us out as best as they can at this point. So that's the high school in a nutshell. Any specific questions?
PAC is the performing arts,
Correct.
correct?
And we've been looking at September. That's not a critical area for us in terms of opening the school. That's one we've been talking about almost since inception, is one that would be late, looking at September completion time at that point when we got started with this project. So we knew that one, from the exterior you wouldn't be able to tell it, but the interior will be finishing up, doing some finishes, interior finishes there.
All right, I'll jump into Irving Elementary, starting on the outside of the building so you can kind of work our way in and see where we're heading. I think the last update we were talking about the site work taking place, and from the time of the last meeting, we've done the additional demo of the parking lot that was remaining there off of the backside of the Mercy storage locations, and we uncovered some items, some existing storm sewer structures, and what we thought was a potential sinkhole that we've explored and opened back up and confirmed. So we've had to do some mitigation on site to address those things. Snyder Construction and their sub Asbel, Jeff Asbel, have done a great job getting some quick materials turned around for us so that we could raise some of the existing structures that were uncovered up. So we're back in progress with making the site paving move forward. So concrete's going to start this week. And we hope to just keep that sequence moving right around the back of the building. Phase 1 was that southwest parking lot, so that's the area where we're starting the curbs, and then they'll do the back drive, moving all the way around to the last phase. So we've got 3 phases, the last phase being where our trailers are at, so we're going to start moving those out over the next month so that finishing up towards the end of September, we'll be finishing that grade and getting the last of the site moving, cleaned up. From an exterior standpoint of the building, you can see that we've got all of the exterior window systems. Commercial Glass has done a great job over the past 3 weeks getting all the window systems in, short of a few windows that we had some issues with. So we're really proud of their progress. We've got the entries that we're working on, the stucco systems completing right now. So they're a couple weeks out, and then we'll put the last of the entry systems in place, and it'll be enclosed from an outside standpoint. Looking in, it'll be really cleaned up and your final look. Inside the building, we've got the paint on I guess it would be the 2nd through 5th grade, the 2-story classrooms. On the end of the building, we've got the interior paint in those locations. The aluminum entries into the classrooms are in place and swinging, so you can start to see that. The tiles moving. We've got it all the way along the wainscot, short of tying into the windows where we're lacking just a couple days tie-in, and they're finishing up the bathroom tile right now. So we're coordinating unit startup, the power's on, the equipment's set, and we're working through the factory startup right now. Actually, this week, this Friday is when we're planning on doing that. Following that hurdle, we'll start getting the casework in there, and doing the final finishes in Area C and just move ourselves through Area B. All of the gyp will be hung throughout the building this week. They're painting in Area B, which is the media center library area right now. A lot more color, so it's looking really good from the last tour that was taken out there. And they're moving right into Area A, so we're tracking right on schedule with finishes. We have confirmed casework is fabricated, ready to ship. All of the special finishes, and say all the special finishes, there's a lot of decorative features in there that we've got orders secured and they're tracking to be delivered where we're scheduled. So we'll see the next couple months here, we'll button that project up and move to the final wrap up and punch list and completing it. So things are tracking really good on Irving. If there are not any questions on Irving, I'll jump over to East Middle and Elementary 2, or Soaring Heights. Sorry, I need to get that name down. It's tracking well. It would be great if we were in the same condition as Irving right now. We've got kind of had the same time frame there, but we've got the middle school is painting kind of the similar sequence. The middle school was tracking more with Irving as we were moving through, and then the elementary, or Soaring Heights, was following suit. It's more of our critical path driver right now. The windows moving a little slower than we'd anticipated. We've ran into some issues that we've gotten nailed down right now. We should see the middle school completed out. We're thinking with the holiday week, hopefully by the Monday following next week, all the way up to the curtain walls, which are the main common spaces there that divide the auditorium and the middle school classroom portion. So those are ordered. We have the measurements taken and they're in fabrication. So in about 3 weeks' time, we'll start seeing the last of those big glass pieces going up that separate or enclose the space. So for the time being, we're going to get the temporary enclosures because we are getting ready to start operating units and conditioning the space for casework in the middle school, but we'll pull those back out. It may change the look for a little bit, but we'll pull those back out in about a month's time and start coordinating and installing those last glass pieces in the middle school. Carpet and I guess the other finished products that we're looking at right now, we're pushing for those towards more toward the end of September in the middle school, and we're going to continue that moving through the elementary school in sequence. So we're still tracking. It's always been a tight schedule, but we're still tracking for the end of December and following suit. I guess describing where we're at in the auditorium, we've got the stairs on order. We've started to receive some of the materials that we've staged for the fixed seating, the telescoping bleachers. The paint schemes are out, and John's going to talk about the graphics that we were really itching to get hold of so that we can get those into production. But the base coat, I guess the finish system outside of the fancy graphics are there and ready for those. So elementary school, they're starting to hang sheetrock. You can see we've got some windows that are open, we've got those temped in, and we've got the measurements taken. So those things are moving into fabrication, and we'll start to see those button up the exterior of the building. I guess from standing out and looking in, you see a bunch of open things. You still see the green here and there when we should be wrapping up with our masonry. We expect those missing pieces to be in another week and a half. And we've made some modifications to some of the glazed block that took a little bit longer lead time. So those we're expecting them to come in, and we'll tie those in here probably in the next week and a half. But that'll close up the exterior of the building, and you'll start to see that exterior finish short of the windows that we're chasing out right now. So, any questions on the middle school? I know John's got a nice presentation for you here on things that we're ready to get measured. So I'll turn it over to him if you have any other questions.
Okay, well, we've been working pretty hard, and the exterior, you get an opportunity to see that a lot as you drive by, and the inside is starting to take form, but it's still kind of raw. And so what we're going to do in this month and for our project and in October is kind of what we did before, is we gave you sneak peeks with our renderings and stuff, what the building was going to look like. And I think if we pulled those up and you look at where the building is, they're very, very similar. There's not a lot of difference between the two. So we also had placeholders at that time for graphics in the package that we had. We're going to design, we had not designed yet, but we put placeholders in there. We have over 125 different graphics in the building between the middle school and Soaring Heights, from restroom to big murals to lots of different things in there. And so tonight's is kind of a sneak peek into what you're going to see in October, November, where these will start to be installed in the building and start to really bring the character of the projects into what we had envisioned at the beginning. And we really started working actually this summer pretty hard. The group, our design team, and with the district design team, we got everybody back together And even though it was the summertime and people were off, some people were off, they made time to come in, and we spent a series of 3 or 4 meetings, almost 2 to 4 hours, and going through that process, and came up with our final designs about 2.5 weeks ago, and we've got them all complete, and they are ready to go to the contractors once they get all the physical dimensions, and we'll be able to order and install. So I was just going to walk kind of real quick through the middle school and then the elementary school to kind of give you a sneak peek. And part of the thing was to create, because there are 2 schools that have been schools and are being into new schools, was trying to bring the new and the old and the character and the theme of respecting the past, respecting what you had in traditions, but in engaging that with what's new. And so when you walk in the front doors at East Middle School, you'll go some other graphics that I'll show you a sample earlier, but after you step in on the left side, this big, we called it an ID wall early on, is a big graphic. It's 60 feet long and probably 20 feet tall, and it's basically pictures that Bud came up with and worked through with Nina and his group on middle school kids. So it was the middle school, East Middle School in the past, and we're kind of representing that, and it goes through, and the last slide is where they made the sign for hope, after everything that happened, that this is what they hope for as they move forward in the future. So that's your first and then piece that you see. And then as you move in and you start to look to the right up the learning stair, and you're just passing office, this is sort of the brand of the Eagles. So Go Eagles just kind of sets the tone for the building at that location. This is really interesting. This is a section, so you won't see this like this when you're in the building except in a couple instances, but when you go into each of the middle school houses, remember the middle school houses are stacked on top of each other, and there's a hole in between each house. So when you're down in the bottom house, if I'm standing where it says Inspire on the first floor, I can look up and I'll be able to read Inspire. It goes all the way up through the floor up to the second floor, or if I'm standing on the second floor, I can look down. But that again is a mural that is made up of words. All the white, every explore, hope, inspire, believe, dream, those are actually words making up words. And so it's just a collage of text that creates that. And so that basically, there's inspire, believe, Angie, remember I'm trying to go through all this. Basically, each house has a theme. And,
A lot of the big words that
Big
you
words,
see there.
explore, hope, and dream. So every house will have one of those big words go up. So that's going to be a pretty neat thing as it moves into each of the houses that the kids get to be part of.
Well, and those words were developed by the staff and the parents and the students. There was a survey that was done, and they did that both for words that are used at Soaring Heights and for words that are used at East. And so it wasn't just something that we just said, oh, these are good words. It was actually reaching out to the people who live in this building and will love this building. So.
I mean, as you just move down the hall, we kind of pulling that's on the first floor, so you'd be in the house on the first floor. That's what you'd see, and then you kind of see the Inspire starting to push up through the second floor. The gymnasium, branding the gym, school branding with the signage. So as you come in the main entry, that's what you'll see in the gymnasium on one side. We're doing some, instead of having a typical sign that says boys or girls in the restrooms, we're using graphics on the walls, and that's actually it's 3-dimensional graphics, so there's shadows, and so we have in different restrooms. There's different graphics for each restroom that represent boys and girls, and there'll still be the tactile ADA signs and stuff like that. But this is just kind of a different way of kind of representing that without saying the words. And then this is actually in the elementary school, but it has the same feeling in the middle school. So when you come into the elementary school, before you go into the doors into the office area, it's kind of the welcome area, and what you see is clear glass is the gray, and then the white is the tone that you wouldn't necessarily be able to see through, but light will pass through it. So we're showing again kids playing and being active in their lives and what they do, whether it's in school or out of school, and so that kind of represents as you move into the building. And then in our lighthouse, that middle component that allows you direct which way you're going to go, whether you're going to go to the learning park or the commons, and the art area. Those are just signs that kind of help direct you as you move into the building. And this is in the media center, at the Genius Bar that's in the media center. Again, we took sort of the history of the Duquesne and the schools there in Dunawig, and came up with photos, and so that will be in a circular in that tube there, and that basically that's lit up from the inside, and so that will be part of kind of representing some of the history of the schools that this now represents in Soaring Heights. And then as you move out into the learning park, some of the words that were important to the parents and the students and the staff as you move through, where the collaboration space this is right by the outdoor, the amphitheater, the theater in the park, that's kind of sharing and looking at different things. And then because we coined this as a learning park, it was one of the first things that came out when the very schematic design came up, is Scott, as he was working through this and working at it, thought that was the right thing for what this school represented, was learning everywhere, and it was like a park. And so we kind of created a blooming of a flower and lots of playful words that kind of represent and go along with wonder and what you might do in an outdoor park, in a park where you can learn. So this works all the way around along the edge of the park that surrounds where all the classrooms are. And with that, that's kind of an update. So we'll get to see kind of that turn into a realization here in the next 3 or 4 months. So we're pretty excited about that.
Very exciting.
Any questions? Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Were there
Thanks.
photos, Clifton?
Yeah.
Oh, we have photos?
Yeah, we're ready.
If I could, I'd just add one more thing. Annie and I are going to be presenting with Hollis and Miller at the MSBA conference on Soaring Heights and East Middle School. So just so you know that that's something that's going to be happening. We're excited about it.
I will not be there. No, sad. You guys will record that.
Any questions?
Yeah.
Good job, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you, fellas.
And I only have 2 items left on superintendent's report. They're really
Still
short.
going?
Really short.
We ran
These
out
are
of.
things, this is something you guys wanted to know. Attendance, on day 4, attendance was 7,282. You can add another 177 preschoolers to that number. So I think that, quick math, 7466, is that right? So you can see the numbers there, it's in your packets, 3,598 elementary kids, 1,740 middle school kids, 1,939 JHS kids. And again, this is attendance, not enrollment. The enrollment number right now, we're still cleaning up. Kids that haven't shown up and such, we'll get a September count. We'll start getting this in your packets monthly going forward. So the only other thing I have is Lamar advertising. You may have saw some of our billboards around welcoming kids back to school. And Kim worked with Lamar Advertising to get those, they're taking care of those for us for free, which we really, really appreciate. They're beautiful billboards, and I think we got a picture of one here. And this is on Rangeline, was it not?
Digital, that's one of the.
And Kim, do you want to talk really briefly about the relationship there and how that came to be?
Oh, those are nice.
Yeah, they're really nice. Nice graphic. We designed the graphic, and they put it up there.
Lamar Outdoor Advertising has been a partner with the school district for years, and their commitment this year, instead of partnering with a specific elementary or middle school, is to provide some digital billboard space for us to promote student success and whatever it is that we would like to promote as a district. And we got a lot of comments. People were excited to see them display their Eagle Pride. So this is just one more example of a way that we are going to continue to get the message out this year.
Thank them very much.
Yes,
That's
if
awesome.
you see Tim Ketchum in the community, please say thank you.
He's a good
And
guy.
Where's this billboard located beside Rangeline? Is there?
Actually, I think that they rotated them on all of their digital billboards. So North and South Range Line, 32nd Street. I think there's one on 7th Street as well, possibly. So there are 4 or 5 locations that they're running them through. The next thing we're going to promote is our Reading Matters campaign on these. So.
Thank you. And I finished my superintendent's report in record time.
That's the
Not
longest
to-
in the
not to the
almost
positive.
13 years I've been on the board. Wow, that's great.
Yeah,
A lot of
he
stuff.
wins.
I lost track of where we were at.
Find that.
It's your turn now, Jeff.
All right, so board reports. I have one thing. October, I believe, is 3, 4, 5, and 6.
Yeah.
The MSBA meeting, so whatever you plan to attend, please get with Ms. Waldo and let her know so that we can finalize hotel reservations, things like, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Did you
So,
say the?
3, 4, 5, and 6.
Okay, thank you.
Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, correct? All right.
Yes.
Check the calendar.
Ms. Waldo, any public comments?
No, sir.
No public comments. Moving on. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So move.
Second.
That'd be Mr. Steele, Ms. Sharp. Any discussion? Please vote.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes. Down to the regular agenda.
We covered a lot really fast.
Yes, it's on the regular agenda. Economic Development Tax Incentives, is that you, Mr. Barr?
Yes, thank you, President Flowers. We do have an action item there, relates to municipal economic development, which Joplin School District has several municipalities that are part of our district. Over the years, that sometimes those developments do redirect or offer tax abatements for businesses to expand the job base primarily. Enhanced Enterprise Zone is one tool that's used. Chapter 353 redevelopment for True Blight, that's been an area of downtown 10 or 15 years ago that's turned around nicely. Chapter 100 bonds for, so far what we've seen used is for bonds, the municipality to own equipment by selling bonds and leasing those back to the businesses for, say, $1. So it's city-owned equipment. And then tax increment financing. There's also ways municipalities have to encourage economic development which do not involve school taxes. Over the years, as we know, Joplin School has supported many of these projects. Again, typically they're in the form of expanding the base of well-paying jobs with benefits and for the removal of true commercial blight in limited areas for strategic purposes. The number and size of economic projects, development projects, has increased in the last 10 years. We've participated in select projects in an advisory role, and Joplin Schools has no statutory or administrative authority over the establishment or administration of these projects. Informal, limited discussions have occurred between Joplin Schools and the City of Joplin to arrive at an intergovernmental agreement regarding TIFs. An agreement would provide a good starting point for future project planning. The general statement of qualified support for economic development is attached. The statement will be provided to municipalities so that our general position is known in advance of future project proposals. As in the past, each project will be evaluated and considered on its own merits. There's no cost for this adoption. In recent years, the school's taxes have abated, amounting to a range of $600,000 to over $1 million annually. The abated amount will be reported to the board annually in July. The administration recommends the board adopt the attached general statement of qualified support to proactively provide input to local municipalities that develop future projects involving tax incentives related to Joplin Schools revenues.
So moved.
Second. Ms. Sharp, Mr. Kimbrough, any discussion? Please vote.
Yes.
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 Yes. We coming back to you, Mr. Barr, on tax levy?
Yes, President Flowers, we had a hearing prior to our meeting this evening, open to the public for comment about our tax levy, which was published in the Joplin Globe earlier this month, and we discussed most of this action item. So this item here, we will adopt the levy, having completed the hearing. The levies need to be adopted by September 1, and I will submit those to the county clerks for recording, and the clerks will then forward to the state auditor's office for certification. The administration recommends the board approve school tax levy in the amount of total $3.66 per $100 of assessed value, allocated $2.75 in the general fund, 0 special revenue fund, 91 cents debt service fund, and $0 capital projects fund.
So moved.
Second.
That'd be Mr. Still and Ms. Sharp. Any discussion? Please vote.
Yes.
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 Yes. While we're on a roll, Mr. Barr, accounts payable?
Yes, President Flowers, we have accounts payable, some bills to pay, and the attached bill list items are for payment of materials, equipment, services, salaries, and benefits in both instructional and support areas. The administration recommends the board approve payment of bills in the amount of $13,021,056.32.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Sharp, Mr. Kimbrough, discussion?
That's a lot of bills.
It's a lot of bills.
Doing a lot of construction.
Please vote.
Yes.
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 Thank you.
Yes. Sorry, Mr. Barr, we're moving away from you. District wellness policy, Ms. Sharp?
Yes, good. Ms. Smith and Mr. Cravens. I just wanted the rest of the board to know that this was put on first and final reading for the following reasons.
For the following reasons? Okay. Well, we have this policy currently adopted by the board, and this particular one, MSBA sent, this revision MSBA sent us actually at the end of last spring. It was in our policy updates for the last school year. We tabled it at that point so we could have some more conversations about the district wellness program. We brought it back now because we need to have some action on this so we can get to our other policy updates. We reviewed Jason and I reviewed the policy, then we took the policy to the policy committee. And what our interpretation is that there are pieces in the policy that state that the district needs to develop a committee, and it states that we will do that, and we have a plan to do that, and then have a policy coordinator, not a policy coordinator, but a committee.
Wellness.
Well, yeah, so I'm up way past my bedtime. But anyway, so that's really where we are. We just need to get some action on it tonight, get some input from you all. If you have questions, we'll be happy to answer them.
And the wellness committee is going to be community member, school members, I mean, across variety is why I
Right.
want people to know so that they can be kind of thinking, because as you know, I'm very passionate about physical fitness and nutrition. So I wanted Joplin to be one of the leaders in one of these wellness policies instead of being a follower. So just wanted to get that message out there that maybe when we do this, we can maybe be presenting at MSBA how wonderful we do our wellness policy.
Will you have any health professionals involved in this committee as well to advise?
Yes. And nutrition folks
Ask
as
for a
well.
credentialed nutrition professional. That's what it is.
As we were trying to decide who was going to
If
be the wellness
available.
coordinator, Jason and I stood side by side. He looked a lot more physically fit
coordinated?
than I. I don't know about more coordinated. He just looks better than I do.
No one's cut into my muscle tissue and said, wow, I didn't realize you had so much muscle, though, so.
That's true.
You already Jedi. I make a motion, we approve the wellness policy.
Second.
That'd be Ms. Sharp and Ms. Stickland. Discussion? Please vote.
Yes.
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 Yes. Thank you all very much. On to discussion items. Our September board meeting coming up 24th. Please put that on your calendars. Also, I'd like to thank Mrs. Sechrist over at Stapleton Elementary for the wonderful college-bound program she put on today. It was fantastic. And also remember that this Friday kicks off the Eagles football season, and I believe they're at Glendale. Is
Yes.
that correct?
Yes.
Glendale? Anybody else for discussion items?
I have, yeah, go ahead.
We were going to do the dental program.
I
When
don't,
we're supposed to talk about. Never mind.
I don't have that
Okay.
on my agenda.
Okay,
It's on consent.
yeah. Okay.
You may notice that I'm wearing some new
Eagle.
Eagle Spirit wear this evening that I picked up at Eddie's Closet here at the administration building. So I just want to make sure that
Oh, that's nice.
you can all get your wives lovely gifts, and ladies, go get your
This would be the camera over here.
jewelry, yes,
The Eagle wear?
the Eagle wear.
From
And they
Eddie's
also have
Closet.
lots of, Eddie's Closet here at the administration building. They also have windbreakers and polos and T-shirts, and they'll be getting a new shipment here in the next couple of weeks, so.
Open 24/7.
I'm not sure
Board meeting
about
night.
that.
I have
It's not what
one.
was passed on to me.
I'd like to wish my middle son Garrett a happy birthday today, since I missed his birthday tonight, so,
Well, fantastic. How old
Yeah.
is he?
12. It's hard to believe.
Happy birthday, Garrett.
Happy birthday.
President Steele, or Steele, wrong one, I looked right at you, President Flowers.
Did Paul whisper that?
It's a
in
lot
your ear?
softer. It must be, I think maybe it was.
It's after 9 o'clock.
You
Lisa.
wrap
It's
it
getting,
all up.
it is getting late, isn't it?
This is not good. I did receive an email this evening from Dave Pettit during our meeting that the bus routes have been updated, and so if you were looking for a change, you might want to check the website.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Phil, do you have anything?
Sure.
Then we are adjourned.